Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. Let me tell you, the dopamine, it's flowing.
I am damn excited. Damn excited.
We are so excited to be joining you guys tonight.
Oh!
Well, how you doing, man? Patrick.
Will Sterling.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Oh, he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Intangibles, brought to you by Arrowhead Addict. My name is Price Carter. His name is Christian Ainsworth. And Christian, I'm so happy to say that we have made it. The Chiefs are in St. Joseph, Missouri at Missouri Western Campus, and training camp is here.
Dude, I can't believe it. This drought of any type of major sports over the summer is unbearable at times, it feels like.
Slight at baseball there, but we'll let it slide since the Royals suck.
Thank you for noticing.
Since the Royals suck, we'll let that slide. But yeah, I mean, man, the last time you and I talked, because of some vacations and some stuff happening, just that time of year. Last time we talked, Rashee Rice was probably going to play the full year. We didn't know if Trey Smith was going to get extended. George Karlaftis certainly wasn't going to get extended, and then Justin Ross was going to have another 1,000-yard season here in Kansas City. So all those things have changed since the last time we've talked. So let's start with what is obviously the biggest news, and that's Justin Ross getting cut. Your 50-minute thoughts on that, please.
50 minutes. All right. Yeah, we've got a sheet broken down here over all the offseason moves, but specifically this one in particular. Dude, what do you mean? He's the GOAT. He's the Doris Fountain of our generation. I can't believe they let him go.
Yeah, it's a tough look for sure, especially after him requesting his release from Kansas City, and then a day later, not the suspension, but the decision on Rashee Rice's legal situation comes down. It's like, well, I mean, there was at least an avenue there for you for playing time, but by all means, I mean, let's be clear. Justin Ross hasn't exactly exercised the best legal decisions lately in his life either. So we'll leave that at that. But we do need to start right at the top with what is the biggest news here in Chiefs Kingdom, and that is George Karlaftis gets an extension in Kansas City. There were some rumors about this, but it came through very quickly. A 4-year extension worth $93 million. When I first saw this, when it first came across my timeline, I was a little concerned. 4 years, $93 million. You're thinking, okay, that starts today. They're ripping up the rest of his 5th-year option and then adding that on, in which case he would have been making, $23.25 million APY this year. But then it comes out through some of the various reports and stuff that this runs through the 2030 season. Well, you do some math, it's 2025, 4 years. That doesn't make sense. So it's tacked on to that 5th-year option. $62 million fully guaranteed in this contract. $32 million guaranteed at signing with some injury guarantees. It approaches $61.8 million. That puts him as the 10th highest paid edge rusher in average annual value. This is... I don't know. At first I was hesitant, but I'm really having to talk myself out of this just being a great deal. And I'm trying to take off the red and gold glasses here. But Christian, tell me where I'm wrong about this.
Oh, dude, you're not at all. We talked the other day, and I was surprised that you were not just ecstatic about what had happened with this. You look at guys like Kirk Cousins, who, throughout their careers have earned an insane amount of guaranteed money, and it's just because he's coming up for his deal at the right time. And it's no, George Karlaftis, you get maybe a top 15 edge in the league for top 10 money. That'll all change in 2 years when he, his average goes down. This to me is a slam dunk.
Well, there's a lot of things to look at here with this contract. I think, let's set the Trent McDuffie thing aside here for a second, because that will certainly come up in this. Let's just talk about strictly George Karlaftis, right? He's basically had 8 sacks, 10.5 sacks, 8 sacks, or some variation of that in his career, 24.5 sacks here in his time as Kansas City. Actually wrote an article about this a couple of weeks ago on Arrowhead Addict, which, by the way, your boy basically hit it on the mark as far as the AAV, the guaranteed money, etc., and also some of the comparables. Now, with that cap, like, so for instance, the way that his deal is structured, George Karlaftis will not make his $23 million until 2028. Listen to some of the players that still need deals that were drafted in and around the same time as him. Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker, Odafe Owe. Those are all people who are drafted the same year as him or a year after. I think some of the people on that list have the argument to say that they should be paid more than him. And we know it's not necessarily if you are the best edge rusher on the market, it's timing, right? Like, I think we can both agree that George Karlaftis isn't the 10th best edge rusher in the NFL right now. Agreed?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But when those folks start going, Odafe Owe, Micah Parsons, those numbers are going to go up. And don't forget, like, Trey Hendrickson still needs a deal. I mean, by the time his actual cap hit takes effect of that $23 million, that number that we're all talking about, average annual value, there's a real shot that he's the 15th highest paid edge rusher, which might still be a slight overpay, but not much. And you got to figure also when that deal takes effect, you're probably not talking about Chris Jones's contract anymore. That deal is probably off the contract as well too, or off the books as well too. So I'm having a real hard time seeing how this wasn't a very savvy move by Brett Veach, and also just like, hey, lucky for us that George Karlaftis took the deal.
Oh, yeah. Well, and something that I haven't seen a lot mentioned, especially surrounding this, is the stability at the position. Like, you're looking at George Karlaftis. He's got basically, I think he's under contract till 2030. But you have guys like, Charles Omenihu, who's on a 1-year deal and, might be gone at the end of the season. Other guys like Mike Dana, who's only going to be around for another year or two at max, it seems like. George Karlaftis has kind of been that stability guy. He's like, you drafted him to be an above average defensive end. He's been that. He'll be your defensive end too, like second best pass rusher on the team, and he plays every single snap. This to me, I mean, we talked about Noah Gray getting signed to a savvy 3-year extension. I think it was a year ago about this time. And this to me seems like that, like an underrated guy who's really, really good locker room presence, no off the field issues, and has been nothing but consistent over his time.
Yeah, and one of the values with him too is the sheer amount of snaps that he plays. He's consistently 75, 80% of the defensive snaps played. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck. This is not a designated pass rusher only. He's a true 3-down player. That helps a lot with this contract because you're looking at what are we getting that we're paying for. It's not just the sack production. It's also the amount of snaps he plays, the defensive run stuffing, the ability to play against the run. All those things factor into this. And yeah, you brought it up, right? If you go look at over the cap right now, it's got the Chiefs close to $60 million over the cap next year. If you actually go and look at it, though, you can say, all right, well, Jawaan Taylor, take his number off the books. We're pretty confident that the Chiefs will move on from him. Patrick Mahomes' cap hit next year is $74 million. I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say that they restructure that or he gets a new deal. That'll bring that number down. Travis Kelce's number, probably not going to be on the books. Like, you can start really hacking away at those numbers really fast. And Mike Dana, $11 million next year. So there's a pretty good shot that Mike Dana is not going to be on there as well, too. We know nothing about Ashton Gelati right now. We're confident. We hope to see great things, but at the end of the day, we thought the same things about Felix Hanaduku-Uzomah. We still need to know more about him. Charles Omenihu, not under contract next year. So it gets pretty thin at that edge position really fast. You didn't really want to wade into the water without knowing what you know about George Karlaftis and having that be a part of your defensive line going forward, because obviously there's a lot of unknown. So I think this was a stable move, a move that provides consistency throughout, and something that just makes it easy for you going forward as we're talking about team building and where are they going to go. I mean, realistically, you don't really draft edge rushers that late in the draft and hit at a player like George Karlaftis. Gregory Rousseau got a contract similar. Rousseau and Karlaftis are pretty comparable. Rousseau's a little bit better tackles for losses, but as far as sacks go, Karlaftis has the edge there. It's not that common to find quality edge rushers at that spot in the draft. And for what they paid for them, I'm just having a hard time saying anything other than that this was a great move.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, we talked about the other players that are at the position, but I think when you look at some of those comparable contracts too, like you mentioned, like Gregory Rousseau, Like he's another type of player that I don't think has reached his full potential and, has some upside there. I think Karlaftis is the same way. I don't think that we've seen the best of Karlaftis yet either. I think that he's been in great positions to do so, but I think once you get some of these down eaters like an Ashton Gelati, who, at the worst is playing more snaps against the run than he is in the pass, like you could see even an upgraded version. Like I think there's a version of George Karlaftis that has 12 sacks in a season. I don't think that's out of character for him. And if you're getting that player for 23 million APY, like it's unbeatable. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with the timing too, right? If George Karlaftis goes out and balls out this year, like, some people have drawn some comparisons with Trey Hendrickson and him, just kind of classic white boy summer edge rusher vibes. He's a much better run defender, Karlaftis is, than Trey Hendrickson. But if he goes out and has 14 sacks this year, well, guess what? If you didn't sign him early, he's long gone. He's not getting close to this number. Now you have that deal on the contract on the books for even more of a bargain, right? Then you look at it the other way. If he goes out and just has another 8.5, 10 sack year, kind of like what he's been putting up, you're fine with that because you're paying him what you're paying him. So it really kind of was a win-win scenario there for them. I think, Joshua Clayton alluded to it here in the chat. What does this mean for Trent McDuffie? I think a lot of people are looking at this partially because we all think, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to say, Trent McDuffie is the much better player, a 2-time All-Pro, a guy who's really one of the best at his position in the game. And I think there's a couple of things that you have to look at here. First off, let's go back to last offseason. The Chiefs could have gone to the table with both Creed Humphrey, Nick Bolton, and Trey Smith. It's these negotiations, they don't happen in a vacuum. I know it just kind of seems like, hey, the deal's signed, it's over, it's done. But these are long-term negotiations. They don't just go, all right, what about this? All right, what about this? It's okay, let me call and talk to him. Okay, let me go talk to, these things, they don't come together quickly. So the Chiefs come right out of the gate and they sign Creed Humphrey first and give him record-setting money for the position and like a big jump, right? Like he was highest paid by a wide margin. Then around free agency, they get the Nick Bolton deal done. And then this year they get Trey Smith done using the franchise tag. They've kind of got a similar situation going on here with Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. My guess is that they wanted to sign one of these guys first and then get to the other guy just because of how these negotiations work and how complicated they are. Also, I will throw this in. I just gave you that big list of pass rushers that all need to get new deals. There's a chance that Karlaftis numbers would have jumped up no matter what Karlaftis did this year because of those other guys. Now let's take a look at the corners. Yes, it would have been nice for the Chiefs to get a deal done with Trent McDuffie before J.C. Horn, before Derek Stingley, and before Sauce Gardner. But Trent McDuffie is still worth what he's worth, right? So to me, looking at the future of the cornerback position, here's the corners and the following class after him. Joey Porter Jr., Christian Gonzalez, Emmanuel Forbes, rest in peace. Not really, but he's not even on the same team anymore. Devin Witherspoon. 0 All-Pro appearances on that list. I don't think that any of those guys are going to push Trent McDuffie's number. I'm not sure who is going to push Trent McDuffie's number. Once the Sauce Gardner number came down, it's probably Sauce Gardner money plus a penny or two, hypothetically speaking. So I'm just not really sure why the Chiefs. Would we love to have the long term? Yes, we'd love to have it. Also, the tag number is smaller for corners than edge rushers. So they've given themselves this runway here. I'm not necessarily sure there's going to be someone pushing Trent McDuffie's contract up even higher other than Trent McDuffie himself. If he goes out and has another first-team All-Pro year in the slot, yeah, it's possible that he pushes his number up to 31 million APY. So I think that's my take on that. That's why they chose to do Karlaftis first, because I think there was much more room for his contract to go than Trent McDuffie's.
So hold on, just to be clear here, you're expecting them to use the tag on Trent McDuffie, or
I'm not saying that that's like a for sure thing, but they're choosing the longer path with McDuffie, right? Like Karlaftis, they went ahead and got it done now. It's not a coincidence that it happened before he took the field in camp, right? Like that happened right as they showed up. With McDuffie, I think it's pretty clear that if the Chiefs seem to not do extensions in the middle of the year. Some teams do. To me, it's very clear, like when, they might get something done in training camp, but when they say snap to start the year, usually they don't hand out extensions in the middle of that year, which is fine. That's just an organizational philosophy. Some teams do, some teams don't. Like I know like Justice Hill got an extension from the Ravens like in the middle of the season. It does happen. But to me, I think that they are probably going to take the longer road with McDuffie. And I think, the franchise tag is a device that they can use. And if they have to use it, at least they chose the player that has the lower tag number.
Yeah, and I agree with you to that point, but I think that it's important that we look at the context surrounding this. So we'll just take a look at those other cornerbacks that you mentioned, right? Nobody is really going to be pushing Trent McDuffie for his number. I think that gives him a little bit more leverage in this type of situation where it's like, hey, listen, if I was going to push for a trade, speaking as if I was Trent McDuffie, that would be when I would do it. It's like, hey, there are no major free agents coming out. I'm a young player, multiple All-Pros. You got to pay me now, or you got to, or you got to push to trade me. So I think that he's got a little bit more leverage there as well. That's also why the contract was so much harder to get done for McDuffie. I think they would have loved to have gotten Trent McDuffie's contract done a year ago or, earlier in the season.
Well, they can't negotiate with McDuffie until the season ended anyways, right? Like as far as where his rookie deal was. Yeah. And this comment here in the chat about talking about Christian Gonzalez pushing Trent McDuffie's number up here. Look, Christian Gonzalez has not been to a Pro Bowl. He's not been to an All-Pro. I think Christian Gonzalez is really good. There needs to be a federal investigation into how Emmanuel Forbes got drafted over him, okay? Mm-hmm. One of the things I loved about Gonzalez coming out of Oregon is how young he was. So he's got all those things. Yeah, I do think there's a possibility that Gonzalez could push for an All-Pro or Pro Bowl team this year, considering the upgrades that have happened to the Patriots defense. But guess what? He's not going to be a two-time All-Pro because that's physically impossible. That's what Sauce Gardner was. Stingley is a one-time All-Pro. Also, Gonzalez lost the season to injury. Stingley lost the season to injury as well, too. So, I mean, there's some similar pathways there. I think J.C. Horn's contract did as much to push up those guys' numbers as anyone else because J.C. Horn has not done squat mostly since he's come into the league, and he was a top 10 pick, right? And Gonzalez kind of drafted in the same area that McDuffie was. So, I just don't think that I see a harder reality of Gonzalez being able to come to the table at the end of this year and say, hand me $31 million, please. Whereas McDuffie, you're talking to 2, maybe 3 all-time All-Pro, biggest moments in Super Bowls, 2-time Super Bowl champion. And like one other thing to weave in this too is like, we've seen McDuffie play on the outside and still be a very good corner. He's a second team All-Pro playing predominantly outside. So I think some lesser ball knowers will say like, oh, well, he plays in the slot. That's not as valuable. Maybe that's something that they're waiting for another slot corner to get a deal, but I don't really know the person that's going to push that number up remotely close to what Trent McDuffie will.
Yeah, and I think it's important too. This is a contract, and I feel like you feel the same way, that is almost destined to get done for the Chiefs. Like they're not in the business of letting 2-time All-Pro cornerbacks walk in free agency or, asked to be traded out, especially when they're his age. So this is a contract I think we both think will get done, whether it's, next year or after a tag. But no, I wouldn't expect Trent McDuffie to be going anywhere and playing in the red and gold for, the foreseeable future. 2030, 31, maybe at the latest he'd leave.
Okay. Well, here's the one thing. Okay. Let's play a game called Price Reads the Internet. And I'm just going to read my tweets to you because in reality, that's all life is. It's just me reading my tweets to people. Tyreek Hill's 2024 cap hit, $32 million. George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, Trey Smith, and Nick Bolton's 2025 cap hit, $30.2 million. Tyreek Hill last year cost more against the cap than 4 foundational pieces of the Chiefs right now. The reason why the Chiefs are able to go down this pathway right now is because they're paying pennies on the dollar for almost all of their offensive skill players, say an aging Travis Kelce and then Patrick Mahomes, right? So if you look at what they're doing, and obviously they're doing that on the offensive line right now too, with left guard and left tackle. If you look at what they're doing, it's kind of like the reverse of what most team building philosophies would say to do. They're paying the lesser positions, interior offensive line, linebacker, edge rusher, and corner. Those are more valuable positions. But it's because they've got rookie contract Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Jalen Royals, Isaiah Pacheco's a 7th-round pick. They're paying pennies on the dollar for Kareem Hunt. All those things kind of factor in there. Now, let's go back to what we were doing. The most important thing, reading my tweets. This is something that I just got my eye on. Brett Veach, these are players that he's re-signed at least once. So they've been back in Kansas City. Maybe it was on a 1-year deal. Maybe they went somewhere else that he's drafted. Derek Nottie, McCole Hardman, Mike Dana, Nick Allegretti, Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, Noah Gray, Trey Smith, George Karlaftis now. These are the notable Brett Veach picks that he's let leave Kansas City. So he drafted them. He let them walk. L'Jarius Sneed, Willie Gay, Colin Saunders, Juan Thornhill. It was easy to look in the face of danger, into the face of controversy, and trade Tyreek Hill, a John Dorsey pick. It's a little bit harder to say goodbye to your draft picks that you scouted, you developed, you brought in, and are victories for you. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying there is a chance that maybe letting Trent McDuffie walk would be the other bold, daring, brave thing to do. This team has routinely developed really good cornerback play later in the draft. I don't think that they will do it, but me and you, one of my favorite podcasts we ever did together before we ever podcasted here was the night that the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill. And everyone else was pressing the panic button. And me and you came on here and said, I'm proud of the Chiefs and I'm more confident than ever about their future because they made this move, because it shows maturity and not clinging to, the glory days, the Super Bowls and those type of things. So with all of that weaved in, sorry, the 10-minute monologue, it might be the right idea.
It could be. You're right. And I think there's something to be said about saving a buck. And there's also something to be said about Brett Veach and his ability to draft cornerbacks and how, effective they've been in Kansas City with Steve Spagnuolo and, our other coaches working them up. I also think that when you have slot cornerback is one of the hardest positions to play in football. It is so difficult to get anybody who can play that position effectively just because of the route tree you can run from the slot and everything that can happen and how close you are to the line of scrimmage and your role in the defense and yada, yada, yada. But I think that is so much harder to find than an effective wide receiver in the Andy Reid offense or, a defensive tackle playing rotational snaps or a speedy linebacker. I just think that replacing him would be much, much harder than replacing a Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think ultimately, if we look at this, if you go back to the Patriots and what they did, eventually the Chiefs are going to have to let good players hit the market. You just cannot sign everyone. I know that some people will say, "Oh, well, salary cap's going up all the time," but as long as they're paying Patrick Mahomes, they will have to get in the habit of letting good players hit the market. And they just did that with L'Jarius Sneed. I think that one might have been easier to walk away than some of the others because of that chronic knee issue that very clearly was an issue, but I do think that they do have to get in the habit at some point of this is a good player. Let's let him walk. Let's trade them. And to their credit, they did trade Joe Thuney, but Joe Thuney was over the age of 30 and was a free agent rather than a draft pick. So that's just something. And I think, Rashee Rice might be the real litmus test because of how much wide receivers are paid, because of the red flags around him as a player. That, maybe he's a guy that they play out on the franchise tag and then they let him walk or they trade him early or something, especially, again, we'll get into training camp here in a moment about what Jalen Royals can bring them. So I think that's a possibility too.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think it's also important to think about what's been invested. Like a second round pick for Rashee Rice and a player with all of his flaws, I think is much easier to let go as well than a guy like Trent McDuffie, who you traded up in the first round to get. Could you imagine though the firestorm on Twitter if he got traded? There's a real situation where all of Chiefs Twitter just burns down and we're left to pick up the
Well, you would hope that people would learn, right? Because we've already done this once, right? You would hope that people would learn that's hey, they've done this with a lot lesser cornerbacks before. And, obviously it's the return and everything. We're talking very big hypotheticals here, but I would just like to say that I just slight eyebrow twinge up at that of just we basically have Brett Veach has basically not let any really good draft pick of his leave. And that is something that they will have to get in the habit of eventually. But let's move on here. Let's, first off, again, just recapping George Karlaftis, he gets the big deal. Absolutely a great move for the Chiefs. We both really like it because of tacking it on to the 5th-year option, the type of money he's going to be making. And then, you see this regularly. The Eagles are one of the teams that are very good about this. A lot of people had their eyebrows raised whenever they extended Devontae Smith. They're like, well, Devontae Smith got how much for that type of player? And now when you go and look at Devontae Smith and where he ranks as far as pay at wide receiver, you're like, oh my gosh. He is, let's see here. He's the 11th highest paid wide receiver at average annual value. He's the best number 2 in the league. Like, him and T. Higgins are right there. And by the way, T. Higgins makes way more than him. So genius move on their behalf. So that's the habit they have to get into. Another example would be Pat Surtain. He got extended as soon as he could. Now he's the 5th highest paid corner, and he just won Defensive Player of the Year. So that worked out really well for them. Hey, real quick, if you're watching this and you're enjoying this content, you got to stick with us, okay? So go ahead and subscribe, hit like on this video, share this video, or join us in the Arrowhead Addict Discord, where we hang out all season long. Christian and I are going to be meeting up in St. Joe on Wednesday to be watching training camp. We'll be sending out our observations, talking about everything that we're seeing up there. So now is the time to get in with a bunch of like-minded Chiefs fans that you can really enjoy this season ramp up with. Let's talk about St. Joe. Andy Reid spoke for 11 minutes yesterday at Arrival. I know that training camp has started because I literally am getting like hundreds, if not thousands, of likes on a tweet that I said, look at the frame of Josh Simmons. He looks like a true left tackle. And like 800 people have liked it so far. When we're talking about people walking into a building carrying a bag and hundreds of people are like, oh, yes, baby. That's when you know we have arrived. And we have arrived. And they have arrived in St. Joe. Some notable notes from Andy Reid's press conference. First off, he got right ahead of that Rashee Rice news. They have no timetable for his suspension, but they are aware of the legal developments there. And that's really all that he got to say about that, as Forrest Gump would say. Some more notable news is there's 3 players who are going to be starting on the PUP list. Just to clarify, the PUP list does not mean that their season is over. Basically, the way that this works, they can just put the players on this list, which means they're going to be not practicing to begin. They can take them off whenever. The one thing about the PUP list is if they take a player off the PUP list and they regress, re-aggravate the injury or whatever, and they put them back on, their season would then be over. That would be season-ending IR. So they do have to be a little careful when they take these players off. Christian Fulton, the cornerback that was signed in free agency, Jawaan Taylor, the right tackle, and tight end Trey Watson, obviously a little bit lesser name there. Fulton and Taylor are both dealing with knee issues. So some news there. What do we think about this?
The Christian Fulton thing, I think maybe not as expected, but it was, he's a guy that's had injury concerns a lot. So it's not really like, jump off the page or you're listening to it and go, oh my God. Jawaan Taylor, though, I mean, he's had some knee issues in the past, all seem to be minor from what I understand. Him being on the PUP list is kind of concerning, especially with the controversy surrounding the left tackle position going into camp. Is there a reality where Jalen Moore starts at right tackle because of PUP Jawaan Taylor? Maybe. I don't know. I don't really know how serious it exactly is, but it is something that you have to be monitoring. And if you're a Chiefs fan, I have concern about.
Well, so first off, the Jawaan Taylor thing, it's not like an injury that popped up that was aggravated. It sounded like kind of a precautionary knee scope. I mean, if you listen to former NFL players just talk about the wear and tear this has on their body. I know Tim Grunhard, Chiefs Ring of Honor Hall of Fame center. He goes on here at Sports Radio 810 with Steroid and those guys, and he's up to 17 surgeries post playing career. I mean, it's ridiculous. So these guys, they do have these scopes and things like that to clean up cartilage and things like that. I'm not going to pretend to know, but it does sound like Andy Reid did anticipate Taylor coming back sooner than later. But I do think that this opens the door for some interesting opportunities. You know what Jawaan Taylor is. He's not going to be taking a huge step forward or a huge step back, hopefully, this year. So this gives you a really good look right away at what Jalen Moore can do, at what Josh Simmons can do, and, to a lesser extent, Ethan Driscoll and Wanya Morris. I suspect that all those guys will be rotating. Simmons played right tackle at San Diego State before switching to the left side over at Ohio State. Jalen Moore played some right tackle in college. He played almost exclusively left tackle in San Francisco because they liked him backing up Trent Williams. But yeah, I do think that this can at least give you a really good idea of what you have in Jalen Moore. And I also think that this provides an avenue very quickly for Josh Simmons to win that left tackle job. When Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey came out day one of camp as starting center and guard, they basically never gave that job back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. On the flip side of that, though, Kingsley Suamataia also quickly won the left tackle job. So the Chiefs, they've got to do more than earn our benefit. They got to do more to earn the benefit of the doubt when it comes to left tackle play and who wins that job outright.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's important to remember, too, like development is a huge issue here, especially for Josh Simmons and maybe Kingsley Suamataia playing left guard. But it's something that we have to see. I mean, we've looked at players in the past like Mitch Schwartz develop into a fantastic player. That's a different regime. It's a different time of Chiefs history. This is completely new. Same offensive line coach, though, if I remember correctly, right? They have
it's been Andy Heck the whole time.
Yes, yeah. But different players, different situations. And I think that I would be, happy to see Josh Simmons play left tackle during the season and Jalen Moore start at right tackle. But, you got to see. You got to make sure this is about the time that they need to do that.
Yeah, and I suspect this camp, when we're up there Wednesday, I suspect that we're going to see a heavy rotation at several spots. And I think that's okay. Like, I think if there's something that am talking about why I think this is going to be different than last year, the way that it ended in New Orleans, it's because I think that they have enough bodies to answer the questions. Last year, they just didn't have the bodies. Whenever Wanya Morris quickly proved he couldn't play left tackle, and Kingsley Suamataia even more quickly proved he could not play left tackle, there was no and then. And now they have some more answers there with Jalen Moore, with Josh Simmons, with Jawaan Taylor, right? I think that those questions become a lot easier. Now, heaven forbid we're in situations where Simmons and Moore aren't the answer, then yeah, it's going to be really tough. But I think both of those answers are better than Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamataia. Same with guard, right? Like I think Kingsley is the plan at guard, but they've got Caliendo, who started a Super Bowl for them. They've got Hunter Norzad. They've got several bodies that can work in there. They could even look at, kicking one of those guys inside, whether it be Wanya, whether it be Jalen Moore. This is a best five situation. The good news is, kind of going back to what we're talking about with McDuffie and Karlaftis, you've got your anchors of that offensive line, which is going to be Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and 95% sure Jawaan Taylor on the right side. Like, I would be shocked if the Chiefs just outright started Jalen Moore over Jawaan Taylor to start the season. Stranger things have happened. If he keeps lining off sides, then maybe he might get to watch Jalen Moore play right tackle. But let's hope that's not the case. The other piece of news, right? Christian Fulton, he's starting on the pup. Corner brought in. This is nothing new for Christian Fulton. The way I'm looking at Christian Fulton is kind of like how the Chiefs used to treat Sammy Watkins. It's like, hey, we're happy to have you on the field when you're on the field, but let's have you on the field. Specifically, January and February is when we'd like to see you. If they can just get through that, I think, the addition of Noah Williams, hopefully getting Jalen Watson back a full year, we've seen them be able to still be a really good defense with Trent McDuffie, with Najee Johnson, with Joshua Williams, with Jalen Watson, Trent McDuffie. Like, that combination, it can work. And that also might provide some more opportunities for Noah Williams to come in. And, that's something that they'll have to look forward to next year as well, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's really nice that this is a position that we feel like is kind of deep on the roster, right? So you have Christian Fulton, you have Chamari Connor, not exactly the best slot cornerback in the league, but definitely somebody who can come in and play quality snaps for you. Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Noah Williams, Christian Roland Wallace, who they were very, very high on. This is a position that they have developed really well. I feel like it's pretty deep. So yeah, Christian Fulton can start off on the pup to start the season, even if they really wanted to. But again, he's a guy that you really want playing. You signed him for money. Was it a 2 or a 3 year contract?
I was just going to say 2-year deal for him too. So that's something here too to consider is the long run here. Cause I think the plan is next year is to probably have Christian Fulton and Noah Williams as your outside corners and McDuffie in the slot. So there's a runway there that I think they have. It didn't sound hyper serious for any of those guys. One piece of good news is the other day I was scrolling through the reels like you do, and I was watching, all the college football accounts and stuff I follow. And it was like, remember when Max Duggan took over the Big 12 championship and him just going bonkers against K-State? And hey, whoa, look at that tight end out running seam routes, catching that touchdown pass. Jared Wiley. Oh, that boy is kind of nice. I'm excited that Jared Wiley, who tore his ACL in November, is already back and should be able to take the field starting tomorrow. No mention of him on the PUP list. A notable omission. That one was kind of up in the air. And I think this is good news if you're a Chiefs fan who did not get to see much of Jake Brennan, or not Jake Brennan still. Oops, sorry, Freudian slip there. Of Jared Wiley last year. And if you're someone like Jake Brennanstool, that adds some heat to that competition, which is kind of what we're getting ready to talk about here is training camp battles. But Jared Wiley not starting on PUP. Good news for him.
Oh, hell yeah. And especially in a season where you feel like Travis Kelce is going to take a step back, like a legit down the field receiving threat in Jared Wiley is well needed. He will find a spot, he will find a role, and he'll play legit snaps. And thank God he's not still dealing with that ACL tear.
Yeah, and I constantly am finding like begging the Chiefs to play Travis Kelce less snaps. It's one of the things I've pounded the table numerous times on the show of he played almost the most offensive snaps of anyone not named an offensive lineman or Patrick Mahomes. That cannot happen this year. And with the looming Rashee Rice suspension, I'm afraid that they're just going to go right back to that well of leaning on Kelce. So hopefully they can, manufacture some touches for Wiley, whether it be, those tight end screens or some of those little bubble things. Like not all those things have to go to Kelce. Having Gray, having Wiley, hopefully that will help with that. But good news there on Jared Wiley. So that was most of the news. They will hit the field tomorrow in St. Joe. Christian and I will be up there on Wednesday. And then believe me, you have a delicious mandate scheduled at Il Lazzarone Pizza. Shout out
right.
Lazzarone, great Neapolitan pizza spot. I got to sell you on the Nutella pizza. They got this sugar cookie crust that they put Nutella and fruit on. It's really good. We'll talk later.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So last thing we're talking about training camp battles. This is tough, right? You've got a team that has been to 3 straight Super Bowls. They're expected to push for that again this year. There's not a ton of camp battles like there might be in some other camps, like the Saints. It's like, hey, who's going to be our quarterback this year? Or the Browns, who are keeping OTA stats on their quarterbacks. But there are some battles to take a look at. So, Christian, why don't you start with probably the most obvious battle and who the contenders are?
So left tackle, I would say, is probably the most obvious. And you have Jalen Moore and Josh Simmons. Like Price said earlier, you'll probably see a good rotation at right tackle. Probably not Josh Simmons at right tackle, but having Jalen Moore go over there, get some snaps, maybe get him ready for the season will be interesting. If I had to put money down, we did a whole lot of draft coverage on this player, Josh Simmons. I think he's going to steal the show. And I think this is a Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith type situation where we go into camp. It's clear one of these players is built for this and the other player maybe is built for something else, and he just takes over and doesn't give it back. And that's if you're a Chiefs fan, you're thanking the heavens, you're getting on your knees, praying to God at night, saying thank you for Josh Simmons. It is a situation where, we are still kind of up in the air. Like, hey, is Josh Simmons still all the way back from that knee injury that he had? Jalen Moore, is he way better than anybody thought he was playing behind Trent Williams? Like the legitimate questions that need to be answered. And it's going to be heated going into the season. Who's the left tackle, Jalen Moore or Josh Simmons? I like both of them better than Wanya Morris. So I don't care. Whichever one wins, it's fantastic for us.
Well, let's be clear. The Chiefs want Josh Simmons to win that job.
Yes.
They have not been shy about that. But I think something to remember about this camp battle is this camp battle was never supposed to be a thing. When you were talking about the draft analysis, right? We come back, like you can dig up some tweets on my timeline of me saying I don't think Josh Simmons is the right player. As we got closer and closer to the time, I changed my mind on that a little bit. But the reason why is because we never thought that he was going to be ready for training camp. This is a guy that you're like, okay, he'll probably start on PUP, might not get a training camp, like a true redshirt year is what people were thinking with him. And instead, no mention of him on PUP, and he's, ready to go day one. That is a huge difference for a player who unanimously people agree was a top 10 talent in this class and probably the first tackle off the board. So that changes a lot of things. And yeah, with Jalen Moore too, I think if the Chiefs could have this planted as they want, Josh Simmons win the left tackle job, looks great. Jalen Moore looks good enough at right tackle. They play Jawaan Taylor because he's the established guy. And then you just got a guy that you feel really good about being your swing tackle. He works in at left tackle some, Jalen Moore that is, in case something does happen to Josh Simmons. And he works in at right tackle. And then you feel really good about cutting Jawaan Taylor next year. Knowing how things go with training camp and the Chiefs and offensive line plans. That's probably not how we'll go because it never seems to do. But I think that's ultimately what they'd like to happen. That's the most obvious one. The next most obvious one is going to be left guard. You've got Kingsley Suamataia, Hunter Norzad, Mike Caliendo, and then, maybe Wanya Morris, maybe Jalen Moore, maybe CJ Hansen. Met CJ Hansen at the Yard House the other day. Nice guy. We did not talk about his performance in Week 18 for very obvious reasons, because it's bad. Okay, I'm not sure that his name is going to be one that I'm expecting to win that job, but there's a whole cast of characters. My guess, Tuesday, Wednesday, when we're up there, we're going to see some variation of Moore, Simmons, Suamataia, Humphrey, and Smith lining up, right? That's probably what it's going to be. It's just who's on what side, and Suamataia is going to get that first look, but maybe they put Caliendo in there as the guy who's the established veteran who's, started more games recently than him.
Yeah, and that would probably be my guess, is that Caliendo gets the nod. I love Kingsley Suamataia, super athletic. There's a reason they thought he could play left tackle in the NFL. It's because he's big, he's fast, he's strong. He's Samoan. You could basically tie all that up into that.
Okay, I'm glad you brought it up. It's really important that we establish that the Chiefs have, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible, a Samoan, a couple of brothers, a guy that you have no doubt of who he voted for. We've got all those guys on one offensive line. Perfect. We've got the redneck, we've got Samoans, and we've got a couple of individuals who are African American. That's what you want in an offensive line. Like that's build your dream offensive line. That's what you want.
Oh, 100%. Are you kidding?
And I want to be clear. I support all of those things. Whatever you like, I support. Okay.
Way to dance that line.
Love all people. That is my line. Okay. So no problem with any of those things. I just think diversity, right? Like diversity, it's great. We celebrate our differences. I used to be in education. You're in education. That's what we're taught to do, to celebrate our differences amongst us. And our offensive line is very diverse, and that's what you want. So yes, the Samoan effect, very, very important. We need, Maui on the offensive line.
You guys heard it here first. Price Carter, diversity, 100% behind it. Not very controversial there, Price. I think Caliendo probably gets the start going back to left guard. He just seems like he's going to have the most experience. He's going to be the guy that Mahomes can kind of lean on, and they can lean on in the offensive line room. Kingsley Suamataia, though, dude, if you can get him to work, he's probably the best option. Hunter Norzad, to me, is kind of a non-factor. I think that he has a shot, but again, I mean, he's one of those players where it's like, oh, is he super athletic, super strong? Yeah, kind of. Does he have the experience? Not really. Okay, well, you're probably playing third fiddle to the Kingsley Suamataia and Mike Caliendo band. Not awful position to be in, but I think those two guys are the main players there. And I do think Caliendo is going to get the start.
Let's move to a little less, we kind of did this in descending order as far as importance. This is a little bit more important with the Rashee Rice news. Keep in mind, we always knew Rashee Rice was going to get suspended. It's just, when was that suspension coming? Now it's very definitely going to be this year, and it's wide receiver 4 and 5. So Rashee Rice definitely going to be on this team. Just going to be suspended. Xavier Worthy definitely on the team. Hollywood Brown definitely on the team. Jalen Royals, unless something really dramatic happens, definitely on this team. And Juju Smith-Schuster, I would say, is almost certainly. So wide receiver 4/5, I'm hoping that they don't do the thing where they keep 7 wide receivers like last year. The contenders, Nico Remigio, who took over the punt and kick return duties, had a really nice season as a returner last year. Everyone's favorite, Sky Moore. Then a couple of UDFAs in Elijah Badger and Jason Brownlee. And then a cast-off from the Patriots and Tyquan Thornton, who made some noise in OTAs. I do think that these guys might factor into the roster a little bit because of the suspension. Like most things, when it comes to fringe roster positions, it's going to come down to how well they play special teams. So that'd probably give Nico Remigio the inside route there to be the 5th or 6th wide receiver.
I was thinking the exact same thing, dude. Nico is probably a lock, I would say. But the problem is now that you have Brashard Smith and some of these other athletic guys that can do punt and kick return, I think that last spot, might come down to who can provide quality snaps at the X and be that sacrificial guy that plays on the line. If we're doing it that way, I think Elijah Badger is probably the guy that they're going to roll with. If they feel like they still need help or they still need a speedy guy that can play and take the top off of the defense, Tyquan Thornton is probably your man. Sky Moore, I would love for him to develop into the wide receiver we thought he could be when he got drafted from SMU. It looks not possible at this point in time. So he, to me, is not a factor as well. The only way I think he gets the nod is because he has experience in the offense, and guys like Jason Brownlee and Elijah Badger do not.
Yeah. I mean, it's really do or die for Sky Moore. And with him, the problem is he's had good camps before, and then he gets in the season and it's just a nothing burger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he has not earned the benefit of the doubt. There is no trust left in the bank for him. So I feel like he's going to have to do something really special. I think the best case scenario is you just find someone who was high on him in the draft and flip him for a 2028 conditional 7th round pick or something like that, like where it's just, here's something. That's probably the best that they can hope for. There's a reason why he was not one of the names I mentioned, but yeah, Badger, Brownlee, both those guys are a little bit bigger, could mix in there. And then, I mean, there's always the possibility that they would go out and get someone like a Keenan Allen or an Amari Cooper. I don't think that's going to happen, or a Gabe Davis or something like that, but it's possible. I think that they like the young guys that they have. And keep in mind, Jalen Royals mixing at the X. And we've talked about this before, that the Chiefs are just going to do X by committee this year. You don't necessarily have – X isn't as much about your body type as much as it is a position that you're willing to isolate on the back of a 3-by-1 formation or something like that, right? Like we've got Bunch to left side, a backside guy that's going to be true covered in man. That guy doesn't necessarily have to be a true threat. And speed is another way that you can threaten at the X, right? Like if you've got a guy that you've got to give 5 yards of coverage to because you're afraid of what they can do over vertically, that helps too. So Royals, Rice, those type of guys, those guys can all provide that. Okay, let's go on to the battle that no one's talking about. Punter. The Chiefs almost always settle their punting stuff by OTAs in mandatory minute camp. They did not. They brought to camp Matt Ariza, the incumbent, and Eddie Kaplicki. Eddie is the punter that they brought in. And, most of these punters, when they get to the draft, like they're really accomplished. Like he punted for USC, winner of the Ray Guy Award, which is like the big punting award, first team All-American, Big Ten punter of the year, all Big Ten and all Pac-12 honors in his time. And he was USC's second first team All-American punter. So it was the second All-American punter out of USC. So this guy's got some accolades here. Like when it comes to Ariza, bro, can you please not kick the ball as hard as you possibly can? I know that you were called the punt god, which, I mean, we saw the leg a couple of times, but it wasn't what it was hyped out coming out of school before all the stuff that happened with him. When Dustin Colquitt retired, he punted one more time, like the Chiefs kind of do that, and he's like pinned it inside the 5 still, because of course he did. And I tweeted, if Matt Ariza got this opportunity, he would put that shit through the back of the end zone. Like I have no doubt. Like he is the Forrest Gump of punters. So it'll be interesting to see who wins that punting job. My guess is that we probably find out who wins that quicker than some of the other position battles, because they like that guy to get a lot of reps as a holder. Ariza did well as a holder. So far, like Ariza's accomplishments are holding and then like tackling the shit out of people on coverage, which was cool. Not necessary, but again, like if you're at your own 45, could you please just not make it a touchback?
Oh yeah, dude. There were so many times last year where he just punted it through the back of the end zone, where you're like, dude, I know like it doesn't really matter because we're at the 25 and our defense is great, but it's like, dude, I know Andy Reid is so pissed right now. Like he just getting an ass chewing on the sideline. Honestly, I could see either one of these guys winning the position. Eddie seems like you said it. I mean, he's very accomplished. Matt Ariza's nickname was the punt god. So, anything is up in the air at this point. It's also a position you hope not to utilize a lot, especially with, Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown coming back for this upcoming year. Like, we hope to God we're not punting 5 or 6 times a game. This guy will get light reps. Either way, I think Chiefs fans are going to be cool with it. Not a glamorous position, but one that I was very happy that we talked about over the phone the other day.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so wrapping this up real quick, just a couple other ones. This is kind of a battle that wraps into one another. Tight end 4 or running back 4. Are they going to keep running 4 or 5 running backs? We feel real good about Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, Brashard Smith making this roster. We feel really good about Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, Travis Kelce making this roster. So the candidates here are Jake Bredingstool, Carson Steele, and Elijah Mitchell. Those are really kind of the guys that all factor in here into like who, and also Robert Tonyan. All those guys could kind of factor into this job. I continue to think like the biggest need for the Chiefs right now at that position is a good blocking tight end, a guy that you can put in 13 personnel and really be a people mover. Because right now with Brennan Stool, with Wiley, with Gray, with Kelsey, they don't really have that, right? Like Gray's probably the best blocker out of those guys. And even then, like he's still a slider frame tight end. So they definitely have some room to grow in that area. So if that's Tonyan, if that's any of those guys that they have that might be able to make a difference there. Like the Seahawks, they just cut a tight end that Noah Fant. He's not really much of a blocker, but I do think that that's something, an area to grow. You've got Carson Steele in there. Like, can he do some of the real fullback things? He didn't do a whole lot of that last year. We know fumbling was an issue for him last year. And again, special teams. Elijah Mitchell is probably not going to be playing any special teams, but do they like him as much with the ball in his hand as a true runner that they're willing to take the gamble on him?
Yeah, and I think that if you're looking at these guys, Elijah Mitchell is obviously the most accomplished of the group. So I think he probably has a slight edge there, but you look at Carson Steele and maybe what he can provide, and I think he's a great off the field guy from everything that I've heard. Super humble, down to earth person. I think that they're really, I mean, I would love for bringing Sewell to make the roster. It seems like a really cool story. But to me, this is running back all day. I think either Carson Steele or Elijah Mitchell make the roster. But like you said, it really comes down to who can do better, who can do the best job at their position. Like, is Carson Steele truly a fullback? Can he do fullback stuff? Is Elijah Mitchell still that guy at running back? That's what training camp will decide. And I would imagine Carson Steele is going to make the roster if I had to pick one.
Okay, last little couple of battles. I do think that there's some slight battle going on in defensive tackle. Feel really good about Mike Pennell making the roster. After that, and also Omar Norman Lott. Then it gets to Marlon Tuipulotu, who spent some time on the roster last year. Fabian Lovett, a priority UDFA from the class last year. Keziah Izzard, a UDFA that they brought in this year from Penn State. And then they also signed Jerry Tillery, who did not have a single sack last year and played quite a bit of snaps in Minnesota. So Tillery's the veteran. I think that he probably had the inside edge, but I do think there's a real shot that one of Lovett or Izzard or Tuipulotu could be making this roster as well too. We've constantly talked about the lack of depth on the interior defensive line.
Yeah, well, it's really nice too that they just signed Omar Norman Lott to his deal, which I don't know why there was so much, I guess, guaranteed money for second round picks.
Too long didn't read. Texans were the first team to ever fully guarantee a second round picks contract to Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver out of Iowa State. A few picks signed before Jaden Higgins. That set off a chain reaction of second round picks not wanting to sign. So they kind of like did mini holdouts. It wasn't a big deal during OTAs and mandatory minicamp because they signed a waiver that's basically like, hey, if you get hurt, like we'll cover you or whatever. But that doesn't exist in training camp. So that's why there was kind of the like blink now. And then also throw in Quinshon Judkins' legal issues, who he was one of the next guys to sign, but teams kind of started to ratio it where they're getting like 85% of their contract fully guaranteed. That's why. So blame the Texans and Jaden Higgins.
Yeah, total hellscape for any second round pick from what I seems like. But yeah, Omar Norman Lott has signed his contract. We saw that. I think it was either yesterday or the day before.
Yes.
But man, I would love Fabian Lovett to work out, honestly. I really, really liked him coming out of college. I think he was a fantastic player. But I agree with you. Probably Jerry Tillery is who's going to get the job just based off arm length. I mean, any D-line coach sees that and they're like, oh my God, I can turn him into
and I mean, Lovett is also quite the physical specimen himself, almost 6'4", 314 pounds with 35.5-inch arms. Those all are, 63 percentile height, 74 percentile weight, 89 percentile wingspan, 98th percentile arm length. So he's got some accolades to himself too. Like I said, he was a priority guy, but and Tillery plays on the outside too. 6'6", 295. So big difference in size there, right? And then when you talk about the arm length, 80th percentile is 34 and a quarter for him. So I think Tillery is a lot more kind of similar build to a Minahu than Lovett. I think Lovett's job is to beat out Izzard, to beat out the other one, Fabian Lovett. Pelota, yeah. So I think those are the kind of the guys that he's competing with. But I do think that there's a chance that if there's a Camp Darling, a guy who, makes the roster on an outside chance, it could be one of those interior defensive linemen.
Yeah, I agree.
And then last little one, they play a lot of 3 safety sets. We know that it's going to be Brian Cook and Jaden Hicks. All eyes on Jaden Hicks as far as how he's taking over that role. He's got big shoes to fill. But the other safeties, what does Shamari Connor look like playing pure safety again after kind of spending a year in the slot? And then they bring back Mike Edwards. Mike Edwards, last year he left the team. It was like, wow, this is a really big loss. He's super valuable. And then he bounces around 2 or 3 teams last year. And it's like, why? Mike Edwards is a good player. Why is he leaving these teams? Comes back to the Chiefs now, provides a nice veteran floor to that safety room, as it's a pretty young safety room. Who's going to be taking a lot of the snaps as safety 3? What does Shamari Connor look like? Does Mike Edwards still bring the juice that he did? I mean, one thing that I'm really excited about for this Chiefs defense, you added Noel Williams, a guy who led FBS or tied for FBS and turnovers and interceptions. Mike Edwards gets his hands on quite a few balls, whether it be a fumble or interception. Jaden Hicks led the team in interceptions last year. McDuffie learned that he can intercept the ball. That's exciting. There's some real upside with turnovers here, something the Chiefs defense has not been particularly great at over the years.
Yeah, well, and it's important to remember too, Shamari Connor was fantastic in 2023 as a safety. That's what he came in. Yeah, a role-playing safety, 81 PFF score, overall grade, super solid player. He goes to the slot, and then we say, okay, maybe, he's not that guy anymore. Mike Edwards, though, like you said, ball hawk guy, gets his hands on a lot of footballs, makes a lot of plays. Dude, I want to see Shamari Connor play well and redeem himself this upcoming year. That, to me, would be one of the best storylines. Like, hey, listen, coach, I was out of position, puts him back into the correct position, and now he's just balling, and now the Chiefs defense is better than ever, and we have, legit slot players. That would probably be the greatest outcome for the Chiefs as far as the safety 3 spot is concerned, is for Shamari Connor to be that guy. Love the Mike Edwards signing, though. That was one guy that we looked at, especially, was like, dude, that seems just like a perfect fit. Like, he'll come in, do what he did the year he was here, and then, sail off into the distance with another Super Bowl ring, and everything will be great. But yeah, Shamari Connor probably my pick for that last spot.
Yeah, and good news is like the Edwards move probably made you feel a little bit more comfortable about moving on from Justin Reid, who is, obviously very valuable to the team, and makes you a little bit more comfortable rolling with Jaden Hicks at the safety position. So, and obviously this goes without saying, biggest thing is injuries, right? Like, that's just the number one thing you don't want to see in camp. Inevitably 2 or 3 player seasons will end in training camp. So obviously a big thing there that you want to keep an eye out for. Christian and I will be out there keeping an eye on that. Be sure to look us up. Christian, what's your Twitter handle now? I don't have it memorized like I used to.
Oh, actually, you plug yours first, because I gotta.
You can follow me on Twitter at Price A Carter. Of course, you're following at Arrowhead Addict, our home base for everything. And make sure you're checking out the written work. We've got lots of great articles going up. Matt Connor is always killing it over there. We've got a show every single day of the week here on the Arrowhead Addict Network. Check out Tuesdays on Tuesdays, the Kingdom Queens on Wednesday, the OG Hour with Patrick Allen on Thursday, and Freaky Friday with Adam Best and Sterling Holmes. Lots of Chiefs content coming to you through Chiefs Camp. Christian, one more time, your Twitter handle.
All right, so at Chris_Ains32. So the first part of my first name, first part of my last name, underscore in between, and the number 32.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much for joining us today. As always, go Chiefs, and thanks for being with us.